Jeffrey wiped the grease from his hands as he stared at the holographic deed floating above his workbench. His grandmother had passed 3 weeks ago, and the lawyer had just transmitted the inheritance documents, a mountain dome, on Kepler 442b, of all places. He'd never even known his grandmother owned property off Earth. The transport shuttle rattled as it descended through Kepler 442b's amber atmosphere. Jeffrey pressed his face against the viewport, watching the rust-colored peaks rise like ancient sentinels. The dome sat nestled between 2 mountains, its surface a perfect hemisphere of weather-worn titanium alloy that had to be at least 2 centuries old. "Final approach," the pilot's voice crackled through the comm. "You sure you want to be dropped here alone? This sector hasn't seen human activity in decades." "I'm sure," Jeffrey replied, shouldering his toolkit. "I'm a mechanic. If anything's broken, I'll fix it." The dome's airlock groaned as Jeffrey cycled it open, the sound of metal scraping against metal that hadn't moved in years. He stepped into darkness, his helmet light cutting through clouds of disturbed dust. The beam swept across the interior, revealing not the abandoned shelter he'd expected, but a vast workshop. Equipment covered every surface. Welding rigs, plasma cutters, fabrication units, and machines Jeffrey couldn't even identify. But it was the center of the dome that made his breath catch. A ship, or rather, the skeleton of one. It stretched nearly 50 meters, its frame a lattice of exotic metals that seemed to absorb his light rather than reflect it. The design was like nothing Jeffrey had ever seen in his 15 years as a starship mechanic. The curves were too organic, the joints too seamless. No human engineering firm built ships like this. "What were you doing out here, Grandma?" Jeffrey whispered. He spent the first day exploring, finding his grandmother's living quarters in a sealed section. Her journals were there, hundreds of them, written in her cramped handwriting. Jeffrey read late into the night, and the story that emerged made his blood run cold. 50 years ago, his grandmother had been part of a deep space salvage crew. They'd found a derelict vessel drifting beyond the Kuiper Belt, its crew long dead, its origin unknown. While the rest of the crew reported the find to the Terran Authority, his grandmother had done something else. She'd stolen the ship's complete technical database and disappeared. For 5 decades, she'd been reverse engineering alien technology in secret. Jeffrey stood before the skeletal ship, his grandmother's final journal entry burned into his memory. "The galaxy isn't ready for what I've learned. But one day, humanity will need this. I can only hope the right person finds it." He activated his comm, intending to call the authorities. His finger hovered over the button. Then he saw it. On his grandmother's workbench, a data pad was still active, displaying a news feed. The Crixian Empire had just annexed another human colony in the outer reaches, the 4th this year. Earth's fleet was stretched thin, outdated, outgunned. Humanity was losing the Cold War that everyone knew would turn hot eventually. Jeffrey looked at the alien ship frame, then back at the news. He thought about his sister Cynthia, serving on the TNS Valiant, one of humanity's aging destroyers. How long before her ship faced Crixian dreadnoughts? He lowered the comm. For 3 months, Jeffrey worked. He quit his job remotely, citing family matters. He sold everything he owned and had supplies shipped to the dome. His grandmother's journals became his Bible, her notes his scripture. The alien technology was beyond anything human science had achieved, but she'd spent 50 years translating it into terms a skilled mechanic could understand. The breakthrough came when Cynthia sent him a message, her face drawn with exhaustion on the small holo projector. "Jeff, I don't know when I'll get another chance to send this," she said, explosions flashing in the background. "The Crixians attacked our supply convoy. We held them off, but just barely. Our weapons barely scratched their shields. I'm scared, little brother. I'm really scared." Jeffrey played the message 3 times, then returned to the ship with renewed fury. The propulsion system came online first, a quantum drive that folded space in ways that made his head hurt when he tried to understand the math. The weapons followed, energy cannons that drew power from quantum fluctuations in the vacuum itself. Then the shields, the sensors, the AI core. 6 months after inheriting the dome, Jeffrey stood in the completed ship's bridge. It was small, designed for a crew of 1, maybe 2. A scout ship, his grandmother had theorized. But its technology was centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. He named it the Inheritance. The comm chimed. Cynthia again, and this time the panic in her voice was unmistakable. Emergency broadcast to all Terran vessels. The Crixian fleet is moving on Earth. Repeat, the Crixian armada is heading for Earth. All ships are ordered to... Static swallowed her words. Jeffrey's hands moved across the alien controls with a confidence born of his grandmother's meticulous notes. The Inheritance lifted off soundlessly, the quantum drive engaging with a barely perceptible hum. As Kepler 442b fell away beneath him, Jeffrey plotted a course for Earth. He thought about his grandmother, spending 5 decades in isolation, preparing for a war she knew was coming. He thought about Cynthia, somewhere in the black, fighting with outdated human technology against an empire that had conquered 100 worlds. But mostly, he thought about what his grandmother had written on the last page of her final journal. Humans are builders. Humans are survivors. Give us the right tools, and there's nothing in this galaxy we can't overcome. The quantum drive engaged, and the Inheritance vanished into folded space, carrying one human mechanic toward a battle that would determine the fate of his species. Behind him, in the mountain dome, his grandmother's workshop sat silent. But it wouldn't stay that way for long. Jeffrey had already sent the encrypted files to trusted contacts across human space, mechanics, engineers, builders. His grandmother had given him the blueprint. Now he was giving it to humanity, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they inherited the stars. The end.